I'm Rina. If you're going to wondering where I'm from, I'll be coming from a uniquely Filipino flavor of things. So be prepared. I will be fast, furious, and very flashy. So, as in flash and next on. Right, so I'm here to affirm the principles in which the Long Now stands for. So absolutely, I believe in futures thinking and futures planning for generations ahead. I come from a 5 generations clan, 2 clans in fact. So I do understand 5 generations of living, if not, 7's a bit stretch. And, I care about stewardship and continuing civilization, being invested in that. I teach at university. And, right, so all of that good stuff. In particular, I absolutely love Stuart Brand's Pace Layers of Change. For those who don't know what that is, it's a schema that talks about civilization's categories like nature, culture, governance, infrastructure, commerce, and fashion, and how those aspects can be fast or slow depending on circumstances. And love it, and I wish I knew about that when I was studying my BA and my MA, because Stuart Brand talks about it in 1998, and I did my course in, before that and after. So I absolutely stand for all that. I'm here, though, to recognize some of the short-sightedness that also the Long Now wants to cure. And specifically, though, I'm here to represent other elephants in the room of conferences and talks that I've been to. And I'm going to be less of a Debbie Downer and more of a Debbie Diagnoser, right? by focusing on the devil in the detail, right? The dismal details that people kind of want to ignore and, be a bit anodyne about. So first off, this quote, in fact, at the last Long Now chat on Sunday, it's a frequently quoted motivational thing about activism and trying to do the best we can with whatever resources we have. Really lovely, great, committed citizens. However, why is it always benign, or the assumption is that it's benign application? My challenge is quite the opposite. What small group of committed people might actually have malign intentions? And so I'm going to quote Shakespeare, specifically Julius Caesar, where Mark Antony says, "The evil that men do lives long after them. The good is oft interred with the bones." So when we talk about governance, this is why we get a bit fiddly, that person's in power again, or repeat those that in president, or whatever despots we're fussing about. Because, there are evil deeds that live long, and I'm specifically coming from the Philippines, where it has never recovered from the 20 years of rule by Ferdinand Marcos from the 1970s to 1986, right? So that's the context I'm coming from. So this thing of elephants in the room, the problem now, augmenting that, is that I'm not making any judgment or statements about people who will have ADHD. What I'm referring to is the signal in which people are, or especially my students, age 18 to 20, are freaking out that they cannot remember much. They do not have the capacity, they do not have the bandwidth. I haven't got time to think deeper in terms of length, breadth, or even depth, right? And so that poses a challenge to Long Now's wish to talk about, imagination and how we address the future in this long-term thinking that requires heavy cognitive spade work, a lot of physical digging through and finding out what is at the bottom of most things. We live in this thing called a global village, and that's talked about a lot. But my question again is, to what extent are people really living what that means? Have you actually lived in a village, or do you belong to a village with, say, 11 aunts and uncles and 50 first cousins, which I do, right? And that kind of messiness that comes with in terms of communications, relationship issues, and all of that. So ideal, the global village is idealized, but the practical realities, which is the unit of core community work, is a bit troublesome. So, probe, right, is that whatever your opinions might be on certain questionable topics, I ask that maybe evil prevails not because good men do nothing, good men do, but what if evil prevails because maybe wicked people are always up to something? Really. And I'm talking about history. So here's a commonly frequent passage again, like from the Bible. And all it relates to is the good, the bad, and ugly that happens in history. Walter Wink, who's a theologian, talks about this in 3 books called Naming the Powers, Unmasking the Powers, and then Engaging the Powers. So what are the powers? And also this idea that spiritual warfare is actually incarnate in people, in actual people and institutions, right? So not necessarily demons and angels, but actually people. And what I'm referring to is cultural hegemony, hegemon being leader or sovereign or guide. And I don't know how common it is for you, but in the Philippines, it's always about everything is explained by who has the gold to buy the guns, hire the goons, and then go for glory. And then if you have God, that is the ultimate empire mix. And in the 21st century, add AI gadgetry, drones, nuclear weapons, that's it, right? So military and cultural hegemony. Oh, I love the little Taiwan. So this is my probe really, and time's up. But like how do we talk about hegemony? And in a world where AI, this is all that's happening, regurgitation, routine, remix, again, surface stuff, not really deep and distracted by entertainment. And my point as an educator is we need to champion this nature and culture of reading, writing, arithmetic or algorithmic, and the education. If that is not the answer, you're asking the wrong question. So because obviously there is private manipulation going on, evidence of that, in terms of what this is, instead of what the futures or what the F is going on, my F is what are we doing with families? Like how are we establishing, how are we raising our children? How are we also imparting long-term past and knowledge? And that's a probe that I have, because that's not being taught at schools, like futures thinking. But also, finally, when we're talking about down with the patriarchy, how important is patrimony? Because this is, again, the undiagnosed thing with, and I'm finishing off, the diagnosing with problems with, the right. It's core family, right? At the unit of communities, we are not addressing the needs or sanctuary or sanctity of family units. And that's what people traditionally, conservatively care about in different parts of the world. And family dynasties, oligarchy, and all that is stuff that I'm willing to talk more about. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.